Welcome back to BTR Boxing Podcast Network. This is your big fight preview for Oleksandr Usyk and Anthony Joshua 2, the rematch in Saudi Arabia. Excited to be talking about this one with my co-host and compatriot Johnston. We love these big fights. These are what we really thrive for in the sport. It's what we tune into the sport for. It's what brings eyeballs to the sport. Huge fights, and this certainly is one of the biggest fights of this year. Very excited to be talking about it, giving our thoughts, feelings and opinions about how we think this might go down. Actually going to be a busy weekend for boxing as well, because there are some other fights to mention across the board. But this is the biggest fight of the weekend, Usyk Joshua 2. Excited, Johnston?
Very. Look, we've spoke about this fight on numerous other reviews, previews, reaction shows we've done. We can't help ourselves. We've always come back to this fight at some point and had quite heavy discussions about it. So our thoughts and feelings are pretty much out there already. I don't think there's going to be any more surprises on our general consensus of this fight. But look, you know, it's a big fight. It's a great fight. You get those casual fans that don't tend to watch the boxing all of a sudden talking about it when you're in the office or out on whatever you're doing, whether you're working on a building site or whatever. You know, everybody wants to talk about it. People that don't generally watch boxing, these fights, the Tyson Fury fights and these fights in particular, the ones that do it. So look, it's exciting. It's nice to be able to discuss it. Again, it's nice to see the rematch. And it's nice to be able to break down what we think might happen finally, because we've discussed it, as I say, enough, but very vaguely.
Yeah, we've kind of already said what we think might happen and who we think might win. So, you know, if you've been tuning into us for quite some time, you probably already know our thoughts, feelings and opinions on how we think it might go down. But if you've not tuned into us before, then this is your opportunity to hear truly what we really think about this fight and how we think this fight is going to go down. So let's just get straight into the meat of the bones then. Is the fact that this rematch is happening, Anthony Joshua taking the immediate rematch, taking the rematch clause, wanting to avenge that loss last year to Oleksandr Usyk, in which I don't think it was unexpected for him to lose. I think people felt Usyk had the skill and ability to beat Anthony Joshua, and I certainly felt like we was in that position at the time. And I know you, Johnston, I'm sure you'll say this in a minute, you have championed Usyk ever since he moved up to the heavyweight division, knowing the skill level that he has and the ability to basically clean up the division. And barring the WBC title, he's done just that so far, and he did it in quite a good fashion when he beat Anthony Joshua last year. He beat him on points, and it was quite wide across the three cards. I think it was 4 rounds on one, 5 rounds on the other, maybe 3 or 4 on the other on the third card. But it was still quite emphatic in my eyes that Anthony Joshua was just completely outboxed. He didn't seem to have a plan B in his locker, and towards the end of the fight, you could see he was struggling physically, and he nearly got put away in those later rounds by Oleksandr Usyk. This blown up cruiserweight apparently has come up to the heavyweight division and caused these ripples. I think what we've got to remember about Usyk is the skill level and the ability and the skill set he's always had in his locker. Moving up in weight was always going to be a challenge, but special fighters do it. Special fighters are able to do this. Oleksandr Usyk is a special fighter, and we know this, and he's a one-off fighter. And I think, you know, going into this rematch, it's going to be very difficult for Anthony Joshua to be able to overcome Oleksandr Usyk. There's going to be mental barriers in place. Physically, well, looking at Oleksandr Usyk in the lead up to this second fight, it does look like he's packed on a little bit of extra weight. We're recording this just as fight week approaches, so we're not having the benefit of being able to see what the weigh-ins are like, the face-to-faces, the final presses. But from what I've seen from the training videos, take what you want from that, it does look like he's packed a little bit of extra weight on. And to me, that indicates that maybe this fight, this time round, won't go 12 rounds.
Yeah, that's if that is the case. I mean, that generally is, if you're going to put those extra pounds on, generally Usyk probably feels that if he had that extra little bit more power and pop than he did in that first fight, as you say, right on the back end of them sort of last couple of rounds, he looked like he could have stopped a tiring Anthony Joshua. I think that the problem is that Anthony Joshua has is that Oleksandr Usyk does everything superbly well. I mean, I was trying to think of a weakness in Usyk recently, just trying to figure out what Joshua could do. And I struggle because he's that good. Seriously, like, when you think of Canelo, great fighter, but if you put a bit of pressure on him, as we see with Bivol, which we indicated before, there are chinks in the armor that Bivol exploited, and I sort of think with Usyk, I just don't see how Joshua stops him, or even because for me, Joshua's not going to win this on points. I mean, the fact is the reason. At the end of the day, I felt really stupid that I didn't go with Usyk in the first fight. I mean, I banged the drum, as you say, for Usyk, and I just felt that I felt that Usyk would win the fight. I just felt that he'd get done. I think with all the crap that's been going on with British boxing in particular recently, is these guys getting a decision just because they're the home fighter, and because Anthony Joshua was the A side, no matter what anyone believes. I mean, when he's a pound for pound best Usyk, but I'm talking about in general. If anyone thinks of Anthony Joshua, they think of him as the A side. So I felt that he would get a decision, an unfair one. But there was no need for that because Usyk was brilliant. And I just don't see, Sean, honestly, what doesn't he do well? His footwork's immaculate. He's relentless. I think that's the biggest thing, is when you watch heavyweight fighters, the only one I can think back to is the only other guy, which is the cruiserweight who moved up to heavyweight, which is Holyfield. The relentless pressure that he used to put on fighters, and he could take a punch. And in the heavyweight division, if you're able to do that and you're able to not get yourself knocked out after sort of 8 rounds, it's your fight, because heavyweights do tend to tire. They have rounds off. Usyk just doesn't have rounds off, Sean. I don't think I've ever seen the guy have a round off. I mean, I may be wrong. But, the only one I've seen cause him any trouble was Marius Briedis. No, it wasn't. It probably was Briedis. I think he's the only fighter. But even then, it was a polished performance from Usyk. I mean, I struggle, Sean. I really do.
I understand why you struggle, and I think there's a lot of people that are in the same boat in terms of, do they want to side with Anthony Joshua because he's the home fighter, he's the fighter that they've been supporting the whole career, or do they look at it realistically and go, well, do you know Oleksandr Usyk has got everything that you just said he's got, Johnston, that he's immaculate with pretty much everything that he does. How does Anthony Joshua adjust what he's been doing to beat Usyk? That's the thing, and the only thing that people have really come up with, as in pundits and ex-boxers, is they're saying that Anthony Joshua is going to have to come out early on and he's going to have to try and knock Oleksandr Usyk out. Because if he doesn't try to do that, like he didn't in the first fight and he tried to box with him and got outboxed, if he tries to knock him out, he might possibly do it. He might possibly do it because he might put that much pressure on him, on Oleksandr Usyk, that he might wane and he might falter. But the issue is, he's got a guy in front of him in Usyk whose footwork, whose head movement, whose body movement, whose switching, the way he can move around the ring is sublime. And even if he comes out and tries to attack and get on the front foot straight away, I struggle to see how he is going to be successful throughout the course of the fight without blowing himself out too soon. And it feels very negative to just automatically write Joshua off, but genuinely I struggle to see how Joshua will be able to beat Usyk in this fight. I really do. If he's going to beat him, he'll have to knock him out. He'll have to knock him out clean. That's the only way I can see it going down if Joshua was to win this fight. And he'd have to do it early doors, because if he doesn't, as time goes on, Oleksandr Usyk just adapts to every style that he faces. He adapts to the fighters he's in the ring with, and he'll certainly work out the game plan very quickly from the Anthony Joshua team. And as soon as he figures that out and adapts to that, that's when Joshua's going to have problems. Which is why I personally think, looking at Usyk, not having the benefit of the weigh-in as yet, I think he looks like he's put some weight on. And if he has put weight on and he weighs in heavier than the last fight, you start to think to yourself then, well, maybe he is going to go for that extra bit of power, that extra bit of weight behind him, so that when he gets Joshua later on in the fight, this time he puts him away. You know, Joshua was blowing out of his arse in the later rounds. There was times where he was obviously hurt by Usyk. Now, if this is an Usyk who's planting his feet a little bit more in the later rounds and being a bit more square on, yes, it might leave Usyk open, but the chances are at that point of the fight, if it goes that far, is that Joshua's worn out as well. So the likelihood is Usyk gets a late stoppage in the fight. And I honestly think this fight doesn't go 12 rounds. I'll be very surprised this time round if it does go 12 rounds. I genuinely think Joshua's coming to try and knock him out. And I think Usyk is going to be ready for that. And I think he's going to take him into deep waters as the fight goes on. And I think we're going to get to see Usyk come out of this in spectacular fashion, and Anthony Joshua having to go back to the drawing board. You know, there's been some big changes made, hasn't there, with Joshua and his camp? You know, Rod McCracken, who has been in his corner from day dot, he's gone to Robert Garcia, who, what more can Garcia add to Anthony Joshua at this stage of his career? Not much. I don't think many fighters who change their trainers at such a late stage of the career can gain too much from going to a new coach. I don't understand. I've never understood the concept of that happening. I think if you work with a certain trainer through the majority of your career who knows you inside out, they know what you can do, they know what you can't do in the ring, they know the best way to get you to work, and then all of a sudden you change to somebody who doesn't really know you, doesn't really know where you've come from, doesn't really know too much about you, but has trained fighters and has got a reputation for training fighters. It doesn't necessarily mean he's automatically going to be able to come into camp and change things that are going to make Joshua a better fighter this time around. There are exceptions to the rule that some trainers can come in and obviously make differences at later stages, but there's not many. There really isn't many. So for me, this is more an Usyk victory I'm feeling at the moment than I am Anthony Joshua. And to be honest, I don't think I'll change my mind on it either. I think we've said this on many occasions, like when we've talked about the episodes that we've been doing over the past few months, and we've spoke about this fight in brief detail. I can't see how Anthony Joshua wins this fight.
I think you're right in terms of the trainers. I think the fact is, I see that Rob McCracken. I feel like he's an honest man. I just get that general feeling with him when I see him in interviews. And I'll be honest, I think he had a nice conversation with AJ, and he said to him, "Look, mate, you know what you have is very limited, and for guys like Usyk, unfortunately, he's just too good for you." I wouldn't be surprised if that was the conversation. How do you beat him? There were certain elements that Anthony Joshua did do in the fight where I felt like he threw his right hand at times from out of nowhere. I don't think it was registered. It was just from the hip. And I thought that was when it hurt Usyk as well. There was a couple of moments when he landed. I wouldn't say it terribly hurt him, but it was just because it was just the one shot. If he's able to throw a punch like that right hand and an overhand right where Usyk is unexpectedly, it lands on him. He doesn't see it. I think he can, when he sees things, he just works it out. Because I think that's the other thing we haven't discussed is Usyk is mentally very strong. And I think that is always, I mean, we've done the Custody Amato episode, and he was like, you know, how the mental game is probably more than the physical side of things. Yes, you can have a game plan, but if you're not mentally strong when you step into that ring, it's very hard for a fighter to be able to adapt and win a fight. So, and I think mentally, Anthony Joshua, I think he may know that Usyk's got his beating. I think he needs to just throw shots from unexpected areas, and then, but he needs to follow that up if he lands. Look, there's no one better in the game in the heavyweight division than when if Joshua can unload a combination on someone, he can get rid of them. There's no doubt about it. I think he's one of the best in the heavyweight division at throwing combinations, and when they land, they're devastating. He's going to have to throw an unexpected shot and then follow that up. And if he's able to do that, he might hurt Usyk and get rid of him because he is the bigger guy at the end of the day. So that's a possibility. But I just feel with Usyk, mate, like you say, he's putting on the extra weight. He's just too strong mentally. He will work him out very quickly. And Joshua will tire. We've seen, when has Joshua never been tired in the ring? Even with fights that he's in control of, he tires. And he takes him into the 8th, 9th, maybe even a bit sooner. I think could be even the 7th round, 7 to 9 rounds. And I think Joshua will be tiring because, like you say, I think his best game plan is to take him out early. He's going to burn himself out, mate. He really is. He's going to struggle. And from that moment, I think Usyk knocks him out. I think Usyk stops Joshua. And if the referee don't stop it, I think he knocks him out. Literally, 10-second counter. He might return to his feet, but he's going to be too far gone. And Usyk wins this fight by knockout, and he will be the man taking on Tyson Fury. If Anthony Joshua defeats Usyk, then wow, it will be an absolutely amazing performance, and I will give him the huge respect. And to be quite honest with you, look, I will be cheering Anthony Joshua in his corner, no matter, I know all the crap that's gone on in Ukraine. I mean, that's the one thing as well, Sean. All the stuff that's been happening in Ukraine, maybe Usyk isn't as mentally strong as he has been. Maybe that may hinder him. I don't think it will. I think it'll motivate him, if anything. And I think because of that, he's just the guy's just awesome. And unfortunately, Joshua has fought Usyk at the wrong time. Maybe if he'd have fought him a couple of years later, he may have had a chance, but I don't think so. Not this time, anyway.
It's hard not to like Usyk, obviously. He's a character in the sport, and the sport needs characters. And the funny thing is, with the English that he does know, the few words that he does say in English, he's quite comical with it all, of course. And I think we all warm to him. And obviously, we want Joshua as a British fighter to do well, and we want him to recapture the titles. We want him to go on to fight Tyson Fury in the biggest heavyweight showdown of all time, with UK fighters holding the belts. That'd be our dream scenario, but it's hard not to like Usyk, and it's hard not to look at him as a fighter and go, realistically, this guy's got this guy's number, and Usyk got Joshua's number, and we've both been adamant on that for quite some time. Going into that first fight, I remember going back to our predictions, you was very much in the mind space of, Usyk's going to have this win, but I'm going to sort of say Joshua, but in the back of your mind, it was like, Usyk. And I was just, I kind of felt the same. I was like, maybe Joshua will just be a bit too big, a bit too this, a bit too that. And not really giving the respect to Usyk about his boxing ability. And what he did was he completely outboxed Anthony Joshua over the course of those 12 rounds. And that, on my head be it. And this time round, I'm not making that same mistake again. I genuinely believe Oleksandr Usyk stopped Anthony Joshua later on in the fight. I can't see this fight going 12 rounds. We obviously have to give an angle from both sides about how this fight could potentially be won, because that wouldn't be... We'd be being biased if we didn't, and I want to be objective about it. I want to look at it from both angles of how this fight could go down, potentially for either man. But ultimately, our personal opinions on here are that it's going to be a victory for Oleksandr Usyk, and we're hopefully going to get to see an undisputed title fight later on down the line. Let's see what happens. It's a great fight. We're both going for Usyk. We both think Usyk's going to win the fight. I'm very excited for it. It really is one of the fights of the year. Could turn into the fight of the year. Obviously, we've got Canelo and Triple G3 coming up, but this one fight could be the fight of the year that we've been crying out for. Although we have seen some great fights already, this could be one of them. This could turn into be one of the fights of the year, depending on how things go down. But it's not the only fight going on that weekend. The undercard for this show has actually turned out to be not too bad, to be honest with you. I mean, on the undercard, you've got Callum Smith fighting Matthew Bauderlique, who's 21-1. Callum Smith, rated highly in the sanctioning bodies in the light heavyweight division, looking to challenge for a light heavyweight title. And then you've got Philippe Hrgovic and Ziel Zhang, that fight that was supposed to happen a couple of months ago, which has now been rescheduled for this undercard. Then you've got Badu Jack, Richard Rivera, Andrew Tabita is fighting on that undercard. Ben Whittaker, who's just turned over, got a great win in his first outing. He's also on that undercard as well. Ramia Ali, also on this undercard as well. And these are the names that you guys will know of and be familiar with. So, there are some decent fighters and a couple of decent competitive matches on this particular card. But as I said, it isn't the only fight card on this weekend. Emmanuel Navarrete defends the WBO featherweight title against Eduardo Baez in America, in San Diego. And then you've also got the return of the problem, Adrian Broner against Omar Figueroa Jr. for the WBC Silver Super Lightweight title, happening as well that weekend. So there is some interesting fights going on across the course of the weekend. Some great fights to be tuning into. Genuinely excited. Want to tune into quite a few of them. Is there any particular fights that stand out to you, Johnston, other than obviously the main event?
I mean, it'd be good to see Hrgovic out there. I mean, I would like to see him get rid of Big Bang Average Zhang, because I do think that will be generally what will happen. I think Hrgovic is, I'm sure everybody knows about Hrgovic. He's a guy to definitely keep an eye out for, and he's a guy that could take over this heavyweight division at some point, because these guys ain't getting any younger. So Usyk, I can see Usyk beating Joshua and then fighting Fury, and I think he beats him as well. I mean, I know people think I'm mental to think that, but I do. And I think then he disappears into the sunset with all those titles them becoming vacant. And guys like Hrgovic are guys to be looking out for the next couple of years, because I do believe he has the talent to do it. So yeah, it would be nice for him to see, just to get rid of Zhang, because as you say, it was a fight that was supposed to happen and didn't. It'd be nice to see Callum Smith back in the ring as well. Babu Jack is a guy we've mentioned a few times as a name potentially, so it's interesting that he's fighting on this card, because maybe down the line they're looking at maybe sticking him in with one of the cruiserweights we've currently got. So yeah, other than that, Navarrete as well. Broner, the problem. I mean, he's always been a problem. Never really. I used to love watching Broner just because of the way everything about the guy used to irritate me. But I used to quite enjoy it, and he's just fallen way, way below. He's a substandard fighter now. A bit pointless as to why he's still around. But it's an interesting weekend. The big fight's the big fight. Everyone's going to be talking about it beforehand. Everyone's going to be talking about it when it's happening and after, because it's the heavyweight game and there's a lot of titles on the line. So for me, Sean, it's all about that. I'm fortunate enough I'll be away to be able to watch this, so I'll be sitting at a bar somewhere enjoying myself.
Yeah, well, this is it. We're all going to be enjoying our summer holidays whilst watching this. Hence the reason why we've recorded it not in fight week and just before fight week, is so that we can actually sit back and just enjoy the fight week experience and enjoy the fight itself. And, hopefully you guys will have enjoyed listening to this episode. And if you have, do let us know. I think it's good if you let us know your predictions as well. Drop us a tweet at BTR Boxing Pod,
yes,
or
please.
you can find us on Facebook or Instagram, or you can comment on the YouTube channel on the video there and just let us know what your predictions are for the fight. We're both going for an Usyk late stoppage. We both feel that Usyk's going to get the victory here. Again, not discounting or discrediting anything Joshua's ever done. But again, we just both feel that Usyk is just a once-in-a-lifetime, generational fighter. He's too good. He's too good for Anthony Joshua. And I think he's going to come out with that victory. Joshua goes back to the drawing board. Usyk potentially goes on to fight Tyson Fury. It's going to be great to see everything play out. I'm very excited for it. Biggest fight of the year? Well, let's see how it all plays out. Thanks for listening to us, guys. Thank you, as always, for listening to all the episodes, and I hope you've been enjoying the Legendary Nights series. Just a few more episodes left of that season. Please let us know what you think of the season, if you've got any recommendations for future episodes for another season, and genuinely, just let us know your feedback on the shows, because it really, really does help us, and we really appreciate it. That's it for this episode, fight fans. We hope you've enjoyed the big fight preview. Oleksandr Usyk, Anthony Joshua in Jeddah. Tune in, and we'll see you next time.